All right.
All right. So,
How's it going, man?
hey man, it's going good. It's going good. The day, everything's going good. How about you?
Yeah, it's going pretty well here.
Yeah?
Um, yeah, pretty nice day today. The weather was actually pretty mild in this area where it's typically hot, so
Yeah.
that was
No.
good. And anyway, yeah, I can't
Yeah.
complain at all.
No, for sure, for sure. Well, so yeah, getting into it, the anxiety and and dealing with this thing and I know I've got a lot of just on my experience and stuff like that, dealing with things and um just wanted to, want to voice this and let others know, at least my experience, also yours. And if I could put one thing out for somebody that might see this, that might be going through some tough times, and not really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe thinking that there is no light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm,
This is their life, and they're always going to be this way. And it's going to continue to get worse with these issues and problems that they're having. Just what these anxiety can bring. And I know anxiety kind of envelops a bunch of things, but people that are going through it know how severe it can be. But again, that was long winded, but wanted to tell those people that um, you don't have to live with it for the rest of your life. There's a way to defeat it. Um, it's all within you, and uh, yeah, there is light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully through me and Matt's discussions, not only this one but future ones, maybe it can spark something. Maybe we can cite a book that we've read that changed things, and help possibly get you on a path to being better. And when I say being better, not uh, you know necessarily having to go somewhere to talk to like a licensed shrink or something like that, and not even being medicated. This is all. I mean, this is you're completely better. Like it never happened at all. So
mm.
you know, um, yeah. So before we get into it, I do want to let anybody to see this know that it's it's not fun, and it's very scary to go through. But you can get better. You can get better.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree, and I love what you said about how it's all within you because I think that's one of the problems that I know I've struggled with in the past is like looking for external sources to save me from anxiety, and
Mhm.
save me from other problems too. And um, every time I did that, I always came up short. I was never able to find anything that really lasted indefinitely. It was always I would get momentary relief, or I might get relief for like a certain amount of months, or maybe maybe even a couple years or something. But it would always boomerang back. It would always find a way to come back and um, rear its ugly head. But it wasn't really until I realized that it was only within myself that the solution was to be found. That's when things started to change, and I think that's what um, a lot of people may not know about.
Mhm.
You know.
For sure. Well, yeah, I mean, just going off of what you just said, that last thing of from within, uh, when I was at my most lost, I would say, was when um, I'm reverting to what I've always known, and not to bash anything, uh, but I, get down on my hands and knees and pray with all my might and do it, you know, day in day out, and it it just it wasn't helping, and I knew that it clicked one night that it wasn't gonna. I was gonna have to do something, and uh so yeah, and then something clicked, and it was just like, I'm gonna have to do it. I know we can get into, in other talks of what all that stuff means and stuff like that, but yeah, no, very much so. Uh Learning that the fight is within, and and the mind was the source of it all. It was
Mm.
completely in the mind. It was and it was playing tricks. It was and it took me to realize that, again, I wasn't the mind. I was
Mm.
my
That's a
I,
big
I'm
part of it.
yes, yeah. I'm not the mind. The mind is separate, and I am before the mind is, and uh once I started to get grasp on that, um, it really started to transform my life, and I really started to get a grip on anxiety. Even though I was still going through it, I really had control over it. It didn't, you know, I would say progressively it just got better to where it just, sometimes I could even feel it happening. The chest tightening, my breathing getting kind of weird, and I was almost getting to a point where I could almost just laugh. I'm just like, really? You're coming at me right now? Really? Okay. All right. And then just dissolve it as fast as it was trying to come up. It would just disappear, it just had no more control. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Well, okay, so I'm interested to hear more about that then. Really, I'm interested to hear a little bit of your journey, like the anxiety that you struggled with, how
mm,
bad it actually got, and then what was the turning point? That if you could walk me through kind of those steps, like where was the turning point and what allowed you to kind of get to that light at the end of the tunnel that you're talking about?
yeah, no, um, you know, it's starting to manifest. I think it was always. I can think back a specific time when I was like in fourth grade or something. I remember there was a spell of it. I didn't know what was going on at the time, but now looking back, I understand that it was already there,
Mm,
and
wow.
it's just been living with me, and but it wasn't always bad. It went through maybe a couple of months, um, but and it was debilitating a little bit while I was going through it. I didn't really tell anybody about it, but it really uh, started to mess with me probably in my mid 20s. Just kind of going through life scenarios just like everybody else does, and now looking back, it just I could not. Um, I wasn't able to deal with the world, I wasn't able to deal with problems in I guess in a good kind of way, either I'm suppressing it or I'm running away from it or I'm drinking too much or whatever the case may be. And just dealing with things in all the wrong way. And it not and I think a big part of it was just not feeling comfortable talking about things that are messing with me, because that's
Oh, yeah.
down here in the South, it's just that's a form of weakness, and you just don't do it, right? So,
Oh yeah, yeah,
so
it's taboo, man. You can't
it's
talk about your feelings. There's
yeah,
no showing those feelings. Yeah, you do that, you're not a man,
yeah, exactly, yeah, and
which is
and
really unhealthy.
very unhealthy, very unhealthy. Now I'm much the opposite, and I love it. But yeah, so going through that, and it hit one day. I had no idea what was going on. It was like one of those. It was like a volcano going off. Just numbness and uh, not recognizing yourself in the mirror. Almost like I don't know. That mental breakdown. I don't know. It was very
Were there
scary.
any physical symptoms as well that you had whenever you would go through these anxiety attacks and stuff like that? Would you get physical symptoms?
Oh yeah, yeah. Feel like you're having a heart attack. Your chest's really tight. Weird pains in my chest. I almost look like I was on drugs. It's like itching and thinking I'm hearing things, and yeah, just like how I could describe it is like a circuit board, and you're pouring water on it, and the sparks are just going all over the
Oh
place.
yeah, they're just yeah,
Yeah, and the robot's just like going like this. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so it was yeah, something like that the very first time. And then that was a seed, and it was planted forever in my mind, and it just kept growing, and it was an ugly seed. Oh man, it was hell, it was the devil, it was anything I could label it, it was the worst of the worst. And it just kept manifesting and manifesting, and every day it would get worse. And then eventually, it got into 24/7, wake up in it, deal with it all throughout the day.
Mm.
There's no break, and you go
Oh
to
man,
sleep.
that's horrible.
Yeah, you,
So
you
you
go,
would wake up feeling it.
I would wake up in about 10 seconds, like I could feel it coming. And I would say I would have maybe 10 seconds of nothing, and then it would bam, it would hit, and then it would be there for the rest of the
Wow,
day. Yeah, so you just pace
that is
around my
really
apartment, and I'd be at
that's really
work.
taxing.
Oh, very much so, yes. And you're going through that stuff, and like I said, there's no end to it. And you're thinking like, this is my life. And yeah, after a while, yeah, with that comes depression. Um,
Hmm.
you can't talk to your friends really anymore, because you're a shell of yourself. You're afraid to even kind of go out in the world and talk to other people, because they're gonna view you as like, damn, what's wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
And and again, and then even all that, you're screaming for help, but inside, but outside, you're still trying to shield it. First off, you don't know how to talk about it. Second, like, who do I talk to? Without somebody calling me a pansy or a puss, or like, dude, just like, what are you talking about? Like, just man up,
Yeah.
you know?
Like, come on, man. Well,
Yeah,
and
like,
that's the worst when you can't talk about it and you just have to suppress it, and then you're just like, uh, you're just kind of shoving it, right? And then
oh yeah,
you can't. It almost makes it. I mean, it does. It makes it worse because you can't do anything about it. And then
yeah, yeah,
at some point, if you keep shoving it down like that, it's just going to explode, which is probably what happened.
for sure, for sure. Yeah, it just it's just going on just a crazy whirlwind. And uh but it got to a point, it's probably the scariest point. It was like, you haven't never, and never would do this, but like, you can't help but these like thoughts coming in your mind, and of like, you know, suicide, stuff like that, just weird, crazy things. You like, oh my gosh, like I would never do that. That's a total irrational thought. But then I thought to myself, well, all this stuff that's happening to me now, I would have thought was totally irrational. And could that one day become, you know, a, a more something that makes more sense, because I
Right.
maybe I will be mentally fatigued, and maybe that stuff will start to make more sense to me. And that was then, you're already in a state of fear, and now you're even more in a state of fear. So it's just fear on fear. And then I remember it kind of the turning point was I was in my apartment, pacing through my apartment like always. And then one day I just said, you know what? I'm just going to lay here because, when you're going through an attack, movement is life. It's almost
Oh
impossible to
yeah.
stay still. And I just say, look, man, you're gonna lay here in bed, and you're just. And I was ready to just. I was ready. If it was gonna kill me, I was ready. Like I was done fighting, and I was done with it, and I was just gonna, all right, like I surrender, and you can do what with me as you will. And as hard as it was, I just sat, I just laid there and laid there and laid there, and it's just, doing its thing. And then,
That's the worst, especially if you're just laying there in bed by yourself and you're not
yeah,
moving at all.
yeah, not
That
moving. Yeah, you're
is
just really trying to,
oh, that's hell right there, man.
yeah, oh yeah, for
You
sure,
know?
for sure. Yeah, just laying there, and
Wow.
then, and then after a while, it started to subside, and eventually, I wasn't feeling like normal, but I felt way better than I had. And before I had laid in the bed. And then another seed finally planted in my mind. And that seed was that it can't kill me. And that was
Mm.
big for me. That was big. Once that seed started to, when that seed started to grow, it every day it was like I got less and less afraid of the anxiety. And I didn't worry as much about it because I felt like, okay, well, it can't kill me. And yeah, and then I progressively would get better. Now, it wasn't just that. I was through the course of all this stuff, I was working on mental tools and how to like calm myself and all these other things, and then another big thing after that, I ended up reading a book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, and that kind of summed everything else that had happened to me, things that have started to spiritually happen to me, at that point in time when I picked that book up, and it kind of summed it up all beautifully. And that was like the exclamation mark on everything. And then, uh, I had went, pretty much anxiety panic free for years, and it's something that it doesn't, it's not really even a thought in my mind anymore. It's something that I kind of look back on, and it's weird to say now, but I really think it saved me.
Oh wow.
It
Okay. Yeah.
you know I
Why do you say that?
yeah, I say that because the path that I was going down was unhealthy.
Yeah.
Mentally. I mean, if I hadn't gone through it at that moment in time with the pieces that I had in my life and how it all happened, you know, I, I you call it divine intervention, or, just something, I don't know. I just, it, it led me here. And,
Yeah.
and now I feel stronger than ever, but in the right, strong strength way, and, you know, uh, the world can only affect me if I allow it now, you know. If I want to play the game, and I want to let my emotions run, well, you know, I'm choosing to do so. And if I'm participating in the world that day and it gets heavy, I can snap my finger. I can just retreat to my truck or wherever I'm at, and 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 I can eliminate it all in a second, and go right back to some form of solace or salvation here now in the present moment. And it's
Wow,
yeah,
and
it
so is that
yeah.
just like a moment of silence that you have, or is it like, do you meditate, or I mean, do you think of anything in that moment when you're snapping yourself out of it, or is it just you clear your mind totally?
Yeah, clear my mind. Meditation obviously has it's helped sharpen my, the tools to do so. Um, but yeah, I've worked a lot on just trying to kill the mind, kill everything, like just no voice, no pictures, no images, no chatter, nothing, just pure silence.
Mm.
And without I found without the mind, you know, there there is no more thought. There is no And without thought, there is no more worry. It all becomes very simple, and simple
Yeah.
is quite nice. Um, so yes, that
How do
that's
you? I was going to say, how do you feel like you got to the point where you could quiet the mind? Because I know for a lot of people that's very difficult, and that's probably why they're not able to get over anxiety for one. It could be, another mental illness or, anything else really, any other problem they
Mhm,
may be facing. I feel like, and I speak for myself too, I feel
mhm,
like there's always so much chatter in the mind happening all the time.
for sure.
And if I could silence it, that would be great. And, we can talk about how we have been able to do that, but I'm also just speaking for people in general. Um, how do you get to that point where you can actually silence the mind? Because I feel like that's a big hurdle.
For sure. When I first was told about this, it was complete hippie talk to me.
Right?
It's just like, what are
Coming
we
from the
talking about?
south,
Like,
right? You're like, come
yeah,
on,
yeah, yeah.
get
Come
out of
on,
here.
what are you smoking, man?
Give me another
You know?
beer.
Yeah, give me another beer. Yeah.
Get this guy
um,
out of here.
yeah, yeah. What's this guy like? Where'd he come from? Um, but yeah. So on that, let me think. I know, um, kind of working initially on some mental tools before I had picked up that book. Um, I There was some forms of, I don't know how I say this. If I was feeling okay at a moment in time before anxiety hit me, I was to remember how I felt. Um, and when anxiety hit and it was getting overbearing, I would go back to a simple thought. Now I'm still thinking, but I'm focusing on a thought. I think that's kind of where my probably very infant stages of actually starting to like train myself without knowing it of what I was doing. Um, but doing that, but I would really tell you it wasn't until I picked up that book. That
Mm,
book
yeah,
really did wonders for me,
the
and
power
it
of
was
now.
the
That's
power
what
of
it is.
now. The
Okay.
power of now,
Yeah.
yeah, and it it really yeah, I mean it explained everything, and and the thing about it, it's not a book that talks in like metaphors and stuff like that. It's very black and white. To me, it was very easy to understand, you know, and uh, as long as you're open minded, you're not into like rejecting anything, and you're really trying to understand. Um, it's yeah, it was quite powerful. And with that book, I would say that book probably did 90% of it. And
Yeah,
it it um it talks you through it of training yourself. And it and it's really cool because it quotes all a lot of main figures and that we all know, of Jesus or Buddha or Krishna. I mean, it covers all these all these philosophies and stuff. It's really amazing. But yeah, it's very hard. I think that would be on another talk just on how to do that. But
yeah,
that is very it is tough. But I would say meditation, because a lot of people, I mean, people know the word meditation. That would be to me when you start, if somebody's trying to meditate, like try to that no, breathing, the air hitting the top of your lip, and you're just focusing on something. When the monk or anybody's telling you something, it's when you do that, all of a sudden, thoughts start to fade away, and you always revert back to something simple, and
yeah,
it starts to quiet things down. And but yeah, it's tough, but it is doable. um Very much so. And once you start to hone it in and you practice it, you'll get better and better. I often would go, okay, let me try to do 5 seconds, right? And then maybe next week I'm going to try to do 10 seconds, in complete no thought, no noise, no nothing. And then you start to get good at it, like, okay, well, I can do like a minute, or I could do 5 minutes. Let me see if I can do it the next time I'm in the DMV line and it's person number 17 and I'm 311, and there's a kid screaming to my left and another guy
right.
to my right sneezing and hacking up all kinds of stuff. And let me see if I can find solace right now, you know?
That's
And
the real test.
that's the real test, yeah. So, um, or when, my the Stars lose or something, and I'm trying to
Right.
find solace before I go to sleep, So,
Love it.
yeah. But anyways, yeah,
I
that's
love what you
yeah.
bring up though about being able to do it everywhere, right? Because I think, and I've thought this way before, that meditation has to be in a certain environment, where everything's quiet and you're sitting on a nice cushion and maybe there's nice music that kind of helps get you in that state. Maybe you light a little bit of incense. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I think actually those things are helpful, but you would do those things to help train you to be able to be that way and be in that state no matter where you are. So I love what you said about doing it in like the DMV, or maybe you're in the airport, or maybe you're on a bus or even on the airplane, right? Somewhere where you would think, well, this isn't a very um, good place to meditate, right? It's not like set up for it, but that's really the where you get the best practice, because that's really where you can test yourself and be like, hey, can I do this in this somewhat chaotic environment?
Mhm.
And I think that can actually help you with anxiety too, right? Because, if you're in a chaotic environment, um, that can induce anxiety. But even if you just have anxiety, like laying in your bed, like you were talking about, that's also chaos, right?
Mhm.
So the more you can train yourself to be quiet and to be still and to kind of just be the being, like I've heard you talk about before, and not be the mind, um, I think that's going to help you in those chaotic situations, those situations where you might be having an anxiety attack, right?
Mhm.
But I think the important thing, which you also mentioned, is that it's a practice, right? Like you were talking about starting with 1 second, going to 5 seconds, going to a minute. I think that's important, right? Because I know for myself, I've tried to just sit there and be like, hey, all right, I guess people keep telling me meditation is going to work. I'm going to sit here and be a yogi and like meditate for an hour straight.
Mhm.
And then 5 minutes later, it's like, all right, I got to do something else. you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think you have to work it up. Like it's just like anything else, right? Like even
Mhm.
if you were to go to the gym and work out, you're not going to go straight in, looking small like me and just bench 300. Like that's just not going to happen on your first day, right? You got to one, you're going to injure yourself. Two, you're probably never going to want to go to the gym again. um, you got to start small. You got to start with lightweight. You got to drink the milk before you eat the meat. And
Yeah.
so I'm. These are things you already said, but I'm just kind of adding a little bit more color to it because I think it's really good stuff. The
Yeah.
stuff you were talking about.
Yeah, no. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, again, anybody going through it, um, you know, uh, we're here having these conversations, uh, me and Matt, to try to, um, shed some light because, man, I've been there, Matt's been there, and yeah, it sucks. Um, uh, I mean, it feels like you're possessed, like, um, this is, it's it, there's you're tied down, and it's just it's life just seems very bleak, and uh but yeah, through persistence, training, it won't happen overnight. Now, I have heard of, you know things, happening, but all of a sudden, just some weird trip, and then the mind just like flips, and all of a sudden you're thrown into this like, s- this euphoric state. I've heard about that and read about that, but I would say that's few and far between. But you're gonna have to put in the work. It was told to me a long time ago when it first started happening to me. However long it took you to get to this point is how long it's going to take you to get back to being who you were, or oh, and that's another thing. Yeah, being who you were, once you're a shell of yourself and you start getting better, do you really want to be who you are or who you were? Because who you were is what got you into it, you know?
Right.
So now's the opportunity to build yourself of who you are and not of uh, subliminal, and how family or television or friends or, you know, molded you to be. You can become your own, who you are, and you'll know who you are when you look in the mirror. There's no lying anymore, so that's important too, because otherwise you get yourself right back into the thick of things if you know uh, you don't even
Yeah,
contemplate those things.
exactly. Exactly. And I've been there as well. And we'll talk about that. We're not going to be able to cover everything in one video, one
Yeah.
recording, whatever. But this is the beginning of a journey that Josh and I are going through to try to share with others what we've been through in the hopes that it can help somebody else. And it's not to say that either of us have reached perfection. You know, we're still human beings that struggle with day to day life like anybody else. But to harp on what you already said, we found the tools to help us get through the most chaotic of life's situations.
Hmm.
And it's almost like watching a movie in front of you play out, you know, and you're just kind of one of the audience members, right?
Oh,
Watching the pictures go by, and you know, you get to a point where it doesn't affect you like it used to, right? Like, and it doesn't mean you don't feel anymore, right? Because you could watch a movie and feel something.
hmm.
You can feel sadness when you watch, you know, a tragic scene in a movie, or you can feel anger when, you know, the hero got killed or something like that, right?
Hmm.
But the thing is, you feel that feeling, but you don't identify with it. You don't make it a part of yourself.
Hmm.
You feel it, and then the feeling passes, and then you walk out of the movie theater and you're like, hey, you know, either that was a good or a bad movie, whatever you want to call it. But you know, I wouldn't even do that in life. I wouldn't even try to judge whether a situation is good or bad. I would just take it for what it is, right? I think
Hmm.
that's another thing, and we'll get into this as we keep on going down this path here. But um, that's another thing, right? Is like not trying to put a judgment call on it of like, oh, this is a really bad situation or this is a really good one. It's just this is what it is,
Hmm.
and I'm watching it play out in front of me, and I do feel the sensations that it brings, but I don't identify with those situations or those sensations and those emotions and those feelings. And because I don't hold on to them and make them as a part of my self definition, they no longer have a hold over me. They can no longer tie me down and take me into all these crazy directions, you know, that life can take you in.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I just feel like when you start to develop these tools that you're talking about, the waves of life, although they still come, you learn how to ride them. You know what I mean? You learn how to surf the waves rather than get caught up in the undertow and, you know, sucked back out and thrown back in again, and whichever way it wants to take you, you know?
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it just the world's gonna happen. Um, it's chaotic. Uh, um, and but you know, again, you don't have to you don't have to participate in the chaos, you know. And and if you do, if you're working and you know it's getting heavy and you know relationships and all this stuff, it's all it is it's the world and um again it all lives in between your ears. Now that is something you know you could take as like, oh well, yeah, that's what everybody says, but there's a deeper meaning to it, and it is the mind. And that's the one thing I guess you know we'll say a lot is the being in the mind. And that's something that uh, I feel is very important to getting better, is to is to start, well, to be able to distinguish those two. And that could be a one of the good first steps of getting better, is distinguishing those two. So um but yeah, yeah, moving forward, yeah, I can't wait to have more talks. Hopefully we get uh, a couple of viewers, and maybe they can, you know, uh, uh, you know, let us know something on the comments or something to talk about, or if they're going through something, you know, maybe we've gone through similar experiences. Um, uh, but we all are linked as one, and uh, I feel almost like you know, depending on whatever problem you have or you're going through or situation, it all is it all goes back to there's one root where it stems from, and that is the mind. Um, and you learn to control that. Um, you can become very powerful, and very strong, and strong in ways that you couldn't even imagine. And yeah, and you'll look back on these days of you know crying or being in a dark place, and you look back and say, well, you know what, I needed to go through that to get to where I am now, and I love who I am now, and I can't wait for the next day, and I can't wait to share what I've found to help another, and hopefully through our talks, maybe we can help one person find that path, just to
Yeah,
get them on that path. Yeah. So,
that's all I could ask for, man. That would be
yeah,
awesome. And I think we'll learn more about ourselves as well as we talk through this. I love how you said, we're all one, we're all connected. It's weird how like, we're talking about these things and we want to help others, but we also help ourselves by talking things out, and
mhm.
it's just good for everybody, so yeah, I'm looking forward to more. It's going to get deeper. If anybody, like Josh said, wants to leave comments and has any questions, we're happy to field those and talk about those in later videos. And yeah, I mean, this is the first one, but and again, we want it to just be an open discussion. That's why we didn't really start off with any formal introductions or anything like that. Maybe as more videos come out, we'll reveal ourselves in different ways, but it's just about talking things out, um, you know, telling our story, and we want to hear other people's stories as well. That there's so many interesting lives out there, and journeys out there and stories out there, and anyway, I think it's going to be good, and I'm looking forward to more videos as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well,
Cool.
yeah. Well, I guess this ends the first video.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll close it on this one, but hey man, you have yourself a good night, and we'll look forward to the next one.
All right, brother. You too. We'll
All
see you.
right. Take care.
All right. All right. Bye.